Hey folks, hope all is well. Thanks for those of you who are joining me live. Hey there, Venus, living a life of lounging. Okay, hey P, you good? You here with me today? I love it. Hey KH. All right, so we're gonna get into some questions in regards to moving to Portugal. Some things have changed. Just recently, as 4 days, the government has changed some things on the NHR as far as tax relief for immigrants. So yeah, we're going to talk about all of that. Of course, as always, we're going to do the Q&A toward the end. I'm going to start off with the questions you all have emailed me, and from that, we'll just bring the questions over. Let me move this over here. And I'll start with your questions. I'll stay on here for, I guess, as long as we need. So we'll see. Hope everyone is doing well. Hey there, Diane. Hey, Venus. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the first question is the currency. So what is the current currency rate and how does it affect my expenses in Portugal? So I probably sound like a broken record at this point. Currency in period changes often, right? So let's just go to the computer really quickly. I'm going to show you how you can kind of quickly find this out, and then I'm going to take you to a trading chart. I'm going to tell you now, the chart is going to look a little overwhelming if you're not used to looking at a stock chart, but I feel like I need to show you this so things can click a little bit better. All right, so let's just look here on just Google. If you ever want to know what the currency is from the euro to USD, you could just Google it. And right here on the basic term, you can see right now we're at a relatively good rate. But anytime you're looking at anything as far as currency or stocks or options, you want to look at it at various times so you can kind of get a better understanding. So right now, this chart is a month chart. We're going to look at 5-day chart and then the year chart. So we've been at this level before. So you can see that. And this okay, I can put up the trading chart. Don't be alarmed. Okay. All right. So when you all hear me talking about currency, is because this right now we're looking at the maximum capacity of the euro versus the USD. Okay. So when we had our last recession, if you can see right here, 2007 to 2008, we're just going to pay attention to that right now. Okay. And let's just group that up. Okay, so this was the high. This is 1.6. And so what these are, if you, again, don't be alarmed. If you've never seen candlesticks before, this length is basically saying if it's red, it means the price that it opened is less than the price that it closed. So it opened here and it closed here. That means that's why the candlestick is red. If you see the green candlesticks, that means it opened down here, but it closed all the way up here. And if I'm hoping you guys can see my mouse up here, you'll see a range. Why is this important? Because I think sometimes when people are looking at currency, they're not understanding that it's going to be a range. Right now, we're on a month chart. So these charts just look at the volatility over the course of months. Okay. So the reason why that's important, because I want you to see that your bills, your rent, your things can fluctuate drastically based on if you work in a currency that's worth less than euros. And if you're a USD, that is the case, right? So 9 times out of 10, if we go back to the larger chart. So here we are right here. This is where it's even. $1. Wait, a little bit up. Close. I'm close enough. $1 equals $1, right? €1 equals 1 USD. But if you look at this large chart, for the most part, the euro is above the USD. Okay. So this is fact. This is a live market. This is of today. Okay. So again, we're just going to pay attention to this. And right now we're doing really good. It's just 1.05 equals €1. So that means you only are losing about 5% of your money right now. But please look at the fluctuation. Okay. The fluctuation over the chart. That's important. So in the last recession, again, 2008, we jumped a lot. That is massive. Okay. So that's super, super massive. Hey, Margaret. Hey, Lucille. Hey, Double T. So understanding that the currency can fluctuate, that's going to be something really important to know when you are deciding to move to Portugal or Europe in general. If you are attempting to move to Europe and you make your money in USD or your retirement is in USD, you're definitely going to be affected. So that's important. So didn't want to throw that chart at you, but I wanted you to see real time the fluctuation in the currency. I don't trade currency. I told you guys that. I trade stock. Well, I trade options. So that's you got to know that, particularly when your currency is worth less than the currency in which you would pay in most of your bills. Okay. Well, so that was that question. Let's see what the next question is. I hope that makes sense. If you have any other questions on that, just let me know. And that is what was there any other questions with that? The currency rate and expenses in Portugal. So how would it affect your expenses in Portugal? Naturally, if you are paying rent, your rent can change monthly. What I found to be easier was actually just paying rent up front a couple months ahead of time. Now, that's not a practice I had done the other, 4 years I've been living here, but it ended up making more financial sense because every time you transfer money from the US to internationally, at times you can get charged on both ends. And my bank, actually, I just learned this recently, they're now charging me even though I put all of my fees on my US side. They're charging me on my Portuguese side, which they didn't do before. And when I went, I'll tell you that story in a minute. But yeah, so listen, the world is changing, things are changing. And if you are an immigrant, you just got to deal with it, right? So that's just kind of what that is. But you just want to be aware of it. So rental prices. How do rental prices in Portugal compare to those in the United States? So here's the thing, just like the United States, you can find places that are cheaper, just like the whole country of Portugal. If you're talking about the whole country of Portugal, naturally there are places that are going to be cheaper than others. What you have to decide if you are interested in moving is the neighborhoods that are cheaper. Do you want to live there? Now, if you are moving there with family, let's say you have a significant other or your family, it might not be as isolating to move further out where you may have to purchase a car and might not have access to certain city amenities. But for those individuals who are interested in, going out, meeting people, going to restaurants, often the city life, you are going to pay substantially more for that. And Portugal has gotten super expensive. So we're going to look at looking at rental prices. So I'm just going to show you Idealista. Let me get rid of this chart real quick. Okay, so that was currency. Okay, so Idealista, there's a bunch of different websites that you can go to get rentals. This is one of the more common ones. If you are interested in trying to figure out how to get an apartment, I did a whole video on that, and I will try to put that link in the description a little bit later because I did not do it. I wasn't prepared today. At any rate, so this is just an example. This is of today, October 4th, 2023. And as you can see, here are some of the rates. Now, again, remember, these are in euros, right? So because these are in euros, you have to consider the fluctuation that we just talked about in currency. So again, if your currency rate is fluctuating like this, right, your rent can change. And I need to make sure that everybody's kind of clear on that so that it's not a surprise. And again, you're looking at this in euros. So 1 month, your rent can be this price, and the other month it can increase by 5 to 10%. So anticipate that. Please anticipate that as we're talking about your numbers that you should do before you even leave the country, so that you're kind of clear on what that could potentially be. Okay, so, all right, let me go back to the questions. Okay, currency, rental prices. Is there anything else I wanted to say about rental prices? Oh, let's talk about what's necessary to get an apartment and where some things can get a little frustrating and concerning, right? So if you are in the process of going through immigration, you may have a temporary residency that came from your home country. You have to come to Portugal and do the second part of your residency. There's a certain amount of time that you are allotted. And sometimes when you're working on a deadline, it can be extremely stressful, and you may commit to an apartment that you really didn't want just because the date on your immigration meeting is coming up and you need to secure a year lease. So keep that in mind. I mean, right now, the competition is still very heavy in regards to getting apartments in Portugal. So you may have to get a guarantor. And even if you make more money than your guarantor, they still want them in a lot of cases. If you don't have a guarantor, you may be expected to pay anywhere from 6 months to a year in your rent. Now, the landlord can't ask you for that amount, but there's been these bidding wars that I told you guys my experience. There's been these bidding wars that kind of push that type of behavior, which is a bit frustrating. So it's something to kind of be aware of, so that when you come here, that you're prepared that you may have to spend anywhere from 6 months to a year upfront rent. And then you have to ask yourself, does that financially make sense in your life? Because in the States, you would not have to pay a year upfront in rent. And so do you want your rent or money to sit in a non-interest bearing situation for a year just for an apartment? I can't make that decision for you. You would have to make that decision yourself. But I do want people to be aware that that is somewhat what's happening. If you're coming here and you're doing Airbnbs, a lot of the Airbnb laws have started to change as well. So there is a lot of transition and things that are going on now, not just in Portugal, but all over. But I live here, so that's what I can talk about. But I want people to be aware of that, particularly if you haven't already left the US, right? So that's with the rental prices. There are definitely places in the United States you can live that are going to be cheaper than Portugal. And it just depends on what type of quality of life you want personally to figure out what's best for you, right? And hopefully if you are given some honest facts instead of very overly positive, and be able to look at the negatives and the positive to make the best decision for yourself. Okay, so what's the next question? Okay, what happens if I lose my remote job in Portugal? Okay, if you lose your remote job in Portugal, you're going to be in a difficult situation, but it also depends on where you are in your immigration process, if that's where you are, right? So if you're in your immigration process, and let's say you're up for a renewal, that can be a big deal, because when you up for renewal, they want to see your income, your letter from your corporation. And it depends on what type of immigration you came with, right? So whether you're a business owner or you're retired or things of that nature, that's going to depend drastically as to what they're going to want to see. But if you are close to your immigration date, it's, you're going to have some challenges, because you're not going to be able to show that you have income coming in. And Portugal is not necessarily the country that pays very high wages. So just really quickly, and some of you have maybe seen this chart before, but just with the minimum wage statistics, and this is from Eurostat, right? So when you look at these, okay, you have Spain, Slovenia, France, Ireland, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Luxembourg. All of those are, as far as the minimum wage, are higher than Portugal. Portugal's right here, if you can see my mouse, right? So this is what it was in 2013. Right now, it did rise a little bit, and this is July. These stats are from July of 2023. But here's the United States over here, right? So the United States is over here, and this is showing where the minimum wage is, and we know how the minimum wage is not enough in the United States. So the anticipation of minimum wage is enough in other countries, but this is just the minimum wage. This is not, what everyone is making. But as you can see, Portugal is on the low side, right? So what that means is, if you do lose your job, the issue you're going to have is trying to find more employment. A lot of businesses are going back to the office. So if you're looking for something specifically remote, They may want you to do remote, but they may want you to do a drug test in the United States. So then you have that whole thing, right? So if losing your job is something that happens while you're in Portugal and you are in the process of immigration, in which we have to stay, in the country for a certain amount of months, it can be a bit of a concern. So if you know your job is talking about some layoffs right now, you might want to hold off, because if in the event that you do get laid off, it can make things pretty complicated, particularly if you're going to have any type of visa renewal coming up soon. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, the next question is, how does the cost of living in Portugal compare to the United States? So these questions are relatively difficult when we're talking about a whole country versus a whole country, right? So in the United States, there are places where you can move in which the cost of living can be less, right? The same with Portugal. There are places where you can move where the cost of living will be less. But again, you have to decide on if those places were cheaper in the US, did you want to move there? And if so, why not? Does it not have the things that you would want? And then you have to decide those areas of Portugal that may be cheaper, do they have the amenities and the things that you want as well? So only you can kind of make that decision, but it's really difficult to do the cost of living from one country to another when you're talking about a whole country. Now, if you're talking about Lisbon compared to another city, I can give you a little bit more insight on that. I'm from Washington, D.C. And of course, I live in the district. I'm not in the city anymore. But Lisbon has gotten super expensive. And again, we're not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to oranges because we're talking about a currency that is worth more than the currency in which your bills are if you are a U.S. citizen. The currency in which your income comes from if you're a U.S. citizen and you're getting paid USD. If you're a U.S. citizen and you have a job within Europe, then you're okay, right? Because you're on the same currency. But again, for those of you who just joined me, I just showed a chart. So be sure to look at that on the recording. The chart is showing you the currency can fluctuate. It does fluctuate. That's what currency does. It fluctuates just like stocks and options fluctuate, right? So you have to really be prepared for that when you move and put that into your numbers. I hope I'm not beating the financial thing in your head too much, but I just see some folks making some mistakes there. And I don't want you to make a very, very expensive mistake, right? I want you to be well informed as to what is happening, right? Okay, so that's the cost of living. If I have a remote job in the US, what should I consider before moving to Portugal? Okay, so this just happened 2 days ago, right? So the non-habitual resident tax relief, the Portuguese government has just announced that they are ending that for this year. This is the last year they're doing it. So if you're already in that application status or you already have your NHR for tax reasons, you're grandfathered in. But from anyone past this point, past this year, your tax situation can get disgusting. So it's really important for you to have this conversation with your U.S. accountant in addition to any accountant that you choose here in Portugal. Because with the NHR helped in some cases, sometimes there was a flat rate on foreign sourced income. So if you have a remote job, that means your income is coming from, in the case, it's coming from the U.S., right? So if you have a remote job from the U.S., your income is coming from there. And so you may be taxed twice. I mean, the NHR also, in some cases, could help with getting double taxation. So if you're getting taxed in the U.S. and in Portugal on the Portuguese taxes, that's pricey, guys. It's pricey. I don't know what the full percentage is now. And of course, I have my own company and I'm an employee of my company. So my situation is different how I'm organized. But for the individual, it's something you really have to consider. For those of you who have a pension or retirement, this is affecting you as well, right? So now you may get taxed a higher rate on your pension, on your retirement, and you need to figure out what that's going to look like. You want to make that type of information, or you want to find that out before you come if you haven't already come, right? But if you are retired, and your retirement is USD and your bills are in euros, this is the time to figure out how, if you are in the NHR, you should be okay. I don't know. I don't, whatever year you are in the NHR, because it expired anywhere. I think it was a 10-year program. I'm not in it, so I can't speak for it, but I know that there are a lot of individuals who moved to Portugal and they have gone that route for taxes. So if that is you, if that is you, or anything, if your income is coming from a foreign source or whatever, taxes are about to change drastically. This just came out 2 days ago, right? So I even got an email from my accountant here that was like, hey, we don't know yet. We're still trying to figure it out. I know you heard the news. So right now it's still kind of up in the air as to how to work it, but just be clear that it's happening. So what does that look like for you? Some things are changing, and you just have to be, you just got to wait. Now, for me, you guys know I've been here for 4 years. I've been a resident for 3. So I'm committed. I want citizenship, right? So, yeah, if you are just starting on this journey, you have a lot to consider and think about there. So let me just show you. This is from this is the NHR like pamphlet. This comes from the financial office of the Portuguese government. I usually forget to put links in the description, but this link I did put in the description. So this is a PDF document. It's about 10 pages. So if you want to read up on what it is, then this can be very helpful. And then there's a news article here. I put that link in the description as well. This is from the Portugal News. And this explains the end of the tax relief for non-habitual residents. Oh, okay. I don't really want my consent like that, but you forcing me. Okay. And so this is a helpful short article that you can read. Again, those links in the description. So guys, again, all I'm hoping to do is to get everyone kind of clear as to what's going on so you can make an educated decision for yourself. So where was I? I don't know what question. Remote job. Is that the question I was on? If I have a remote job, what should I consider before moving? Okay. So what you need to consider to answer your question fully, you need to consider the tax situation. And that's really the biggest, if I could say that. Now, also, if you work in the U.S. and they want you in the U.S., and you saying that you're not there, you might want to consider, you definitely want to put some money aside that if you have to fly back to the U.S. for any random meeting or whatever, that you could do it and pay an exorbitant airfare to book that ticket for the next day or two. This is not for everybody, but for those who are kind of traveling and companies are starting to ask for people back. And sometimes they'll say, okay, we want you to have a drug test, or we want you to do this, or we want you to attend this, and it's going to be in the States. So when they pop that on you, you have to be prepared to get on a flight, regardless of how much it costs. So that's another cost that you might want to consider. If you're working remote, if the company is 100% remote, then you probably won't have that issue. But if this is a company that is trying to put people back in the office, just be prepared, because stuff is happening. Okay, so remote job in the U.S. Okay, so we did that question. All right, so how is the public transportation system in Portugal? I like it. I really like it. I like that you can get to various parts of the country very easily and very cost effective. There is a card you can get, a Metro card, that can give you access to the Metro, the train, the ferry, all of the transportations internally. You can do one specifically for Lisbon. It's about 30 euros. And you can do one on the outside that goes a little bit outside of Lisbon, which is where I'm located. And that one's 40 euros. And it's unlimited for the month. You pay for it every month. So I think it's very reasonable. So yeah, that's the transportation, healthcare. All right. How is the healthcare system in Portugal, and how does it compare to the U.S.? I like the healthcare system. Of course, it's Europe's healthcare system in general. It's very much more affordable, but also taxes are expensive here. So now that taxes are changing, you might kind of want to figure that out, but you can have affordable healthcare. It is not free, but it is affordable. And then you have access to healthcare, of course, in Portugal, but also throughout Europe. So it's something I've, engaged in the medical system here. You guys know my story, and I was happy. I think you can find bad doctors in any country. So I had a not so great doctor here in Portugal. I had various not so great doctors in the US, right? So you just still have to take the time to research and find out what you like. And if you have any specialties, go into specialty doctors, that type of thing. So how does it compare? It's substantially cheaper, but you're pretty much going to find that in most places outside of the US, not just, I shouldn't say that. I can't say the whole world, but it's much more affordable. I would say that. Okay, banking. How does banking and financial systems in Portugal work, and how does it compare to the U.S.? I don't all the way know, and if you're, I don't know who asked this question, but if you're here and you're asking that, I might need a little bit more information from you, because when you say how are the banking systems, I need to know what you mean specifically. What I will say is like I told you guys, my recent experience with the bank is my fees have increased on the Portuguese side when I'm receiving money from the US. So when you wire money, there's usually two fees or one fee. The bank in which you're sending it, depending on what type of bank account you have, there may be some fees, there may not be, but then there's also the receiving bank, right? Sometimes the receiving bank can charge a fee. For the 3 years that I've lived here, my receiving bank, which is a Portuguese bank, hadn't charged me a fee for receiving a wire. They just started doing that. And I was irritated because I don't feel like I received any notification that was a thing. So I went to the bank. I think some of the main differences is and banking in the U.S. is more so centralized. You can pretty much get everything done, whether you call or whatever. You have to see your banker for some cases here, which is a bit of an annoyance because I don't live in the city, like in the middle of the city as I did when I first moved. So when I have an issue with my bank, I can call the number, I can go on the app, and they can help me as much as they can help me. But then they say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go into the branch. And so, in the States, rarely do you have to go in the branch to do pretty much anything. So I had to go into the branch and I asked the gentleman, like, listen, what is this fee? Why am I getting charged? Has something changed, right? I also asked about some questions about my health insurance as well. And he explained to me that he didn't know, he had to check with his colleagues. So the fee that I'm getting charged for receiving wires is not even based on percentage, not based on how much you send, and that's how they come up. It's a flat fee, and I thought it was exorbitant. And so I said, okay, if you can give me some more information, if in fact, I'm not going to stop transferring money from the US, that's where my income comes from. So if this is a situation where I need to be in a different product, then let me know so we can evaluate that. I never heard back from this person, right? And that hasn't been my experience the whole time I lived here. If there's anything that I had in regards to banking, they'll send me an email, they'll follow up. That's been my whole experience this past 4 years. And now that I'm asking about these fees and what am I getting them for and all this other stuff, I'm not getting any answers. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling quite irritated about that because I don't play about my money, right? So, and nor does anybody. So not getting answers from the bank is a problem, right? And I still haven't figured out. And if you have done anything with the bureaucracy here, you have to like mentally woosah yourself to feel like, okay, do I feel like battling this today, right? And so I don't feel like it. And I haven't for a while, which is why I haven't gone to the bank to be like, excuse me, sir, I got no answers, right? But it does, like anything can change. You're a foreigner, you have to roll with the punches, right? And that's kind of all of the issues that, happens. Okay, so that is banking. I'm not sure if I answered your question well, but I hope that was helpful. Do I need to learn Portuguese to live comfortably in Portugal? So I don't know what comfortably is for you, but if you're living in the city of Lisbon, it's relatively easy to speak English, but I would encourage you to try to learn some Portuguese. You are in Portugal. Learning the native language is important, and it opens you up to different types of relationships. Like if you moved out the country, I'm assuming that you want to engage in the culture and meet people and things like that. And when you can speak the language, that's important, right? Also, you know, there's a foreign tax in most countries you go to if you out here speaking English and that's not the native language. So things may be more expensive because you don't speak the language, or what have you. So I would say please try for just to be comfortable. If the further out you're moving from Portugal, the more you're probably going to need to learn how to speak Portuguese. Now, everyone's going to tell you, everyone here speaks English. That's what they told me. You don't have to worry about that. That is not true. I don't know why people keep saying that. If you're in the city, yes. If you are outside the city, it can be a challenge. And not that they should speak, like, we in their country, we need to learn a language. So I get it, right? So I'm not saying that. But if people hear that, they may think it, and now you in East Egypt of Portugal and you can't communicate. And also it makes things very much more isolating for you if you can't just communicate in general, right? So consider that. And as you want to engage in various activities outside of, like, when you transition from being an expat to an immigrant, and you want to do things like take dance classes or take, Pilates or do whatever, some feel just as comfortable about speaking English as you may feel comfortable speaking Portuguese. So some people may know some words, but they're super insecure about it, so they don't want to speak English, or they haven't had to speak it that often, so it can still be somewhat of a barrier. So I would absolutely encourage to please learn the language, but to live comfortably, you got to tell me what comfortable to you means. But I think you could absolutely do it depending on how you feel, right? What cultural differences should I be aware of when moving to Portugal? So the cultural differences, that's a massive question. Like, there's cultural differences even in the United States, from the north to the south to the east, west. Like, there's different cultural differences, even though we're all still U.S. citizens, right? So that's naturally going to be the case with Portugal. So it's hard for me to answer that question and give you something tangible, but I will say this. In the U.S., we tend to be a bit more transactional when we communicate with people, which is not the best, which is not great at all. But I really noticed it when I moved here. So, for example, usually when we want something or we need something, we lead with that, right? So you may go to a person like, "Excuse me, can you give me directions here?" Or, "Do you know where da 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 da?" Or, "How do I?" You have questions or you want some type of action. Here, you definitely need to greet people first, right? You have to, like, it's a bon dia, boa tarde, night. Like, you got to do that. Like, there's no other starting a conversation. There's been plenty of times like, "Hi, can you tell me?" I'm like, "Bon dia." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, bon dia." So much so that when I go back to the States, I'm overly communicating with strangers and they think I'm bizarre, because I've been, I feel like that's a major and a good cultural difference, to just acknowledge people and talk to them and see how they're doing, whatever, before you go, needing stuff or asking for things and stuff like that. So I know that might not be what you're looking for, but I would need more information. So if you are here with me, joining me live, then you can ask me further questions on that. So cultural differences, and did I go over minimum wage long term? Okay, yeah, I did. Community. What challenges might I face in building authentic community in Portugal? I guess it depends. I would say, how good are you at developing new relationships where you are currently? And that is going to transition whether it's Portugal or anywhere else. So if you feel like you are an introvert, which I am, like I'm a huge introvert, so it can be a challenge. And I find it difficult because, I'm born and raised in DC, so I hadn't had to make, new friends for like 30 years. Like, I kind of grew up with people and that type of thing. So when you come to a new country, it can be difficult, right? Building community can be difficult, but it is important, because if you're here and you're here by yourself, you definitely want to make a couple friends to make sure that, if you're sick or something happens, that someone's checking on you and that type of thing. So community is important. I think in order to build an authentic community, just be authentic first. Like, if you're an authentic person, I feel like your energy is going to bring other authentic people, because there's some, Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Suitable for, are there specific regions or cities in Portugal more suitable for American expats? I don't know. I don't like it's a whole country. So you have to decide what are the things that you want specifically. Do you want to live by the beach? Do you want it to be colder? Do you want warm climate? Do you want a water view? Are you cool with, whatever those amenities are that you would look for if you were living in any country? You have to kind of find out, write the things you want, and then Google cities in Portugal that may match that, right? So if you want a winter, you can go up north and, someplace you'll see some snow. So it just depends on what you want specifically. And then from those amenities or beach towns or whatever, you just say, I want to live by a beach. What are some beach towns in Portugal? Boom. Google that and you'll get a list of neighborhoods. And then you can kind of reverse engineer where you may want to live to be comfortably for you. Now, depending on how far or deep you go into Portugal, there may be less amenities. So you really have to have a good, long conversation with yourself as to how much amenities you want as a foreigner. I don't know if everybody understand the amenities that they've gotten so used to, and they just assume that these amenities are everywhere, and they are not. They absolutely are not. So just make sure that you consider those things of what is okay for you so that you can decide what works. Okay, so those were the questions that were sent to me. So now I can answer your questions. Just let me move some things around real quick. And then if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I will answer that. Okay, so we're good on time. If I move this here, that's not what we wanted. I knew that was going to happen. So let me lock this. Sorry, guys. Hold on 1 second. Let me lock that. Okay, so let me move this up here. All right, so let me get your questions. Okay, hey, Natasha. Okay, hey, y'all. Okay, happy to see you. Okay, good afternoon. Hey, Diane. Okay, so let me get your questions. Lucille, what's going on? Get a Squab account. Let's say, okay. Ooh, why is that doing it all up there? That's crazy. It's so massive. Anyway, get a Swab account. They reimburse all ATM fees. Not sure about transfers. So your ATM fees are not necessarily going to be relevant when we're talking about wire transfers. And then again, this new phenomenon of having to get charged to receive wire transfers. That's new for me here. So yeah, but make sure that you have the appropriate bank for what you need to do. Hey, Katrina. Okay, says snatch off your rose-colored glasses. Listen, I'm all about being a realist. So I just want people to be able to have some information from just some realistic stuff. Because a lot of this stuff is just not out there because you may not be looking for it or because it may have just changed. Like even the thing with the NHR, that just happened 2 days ago, right? So much can change right now. The whole world is going through a variety of changes. So you just got to kind of be ready to that. Okay, so Anita, have I thought about moving to any other country in Europe? That is a really good question. Right now, I can't, right? Because I'm a U.S. citizen and I can't just hang out. Like the resident that I'm saying is I'm a Portuguese resident. So based on immigration, there's a certain amount of things I can and cannot do so that it won't jeopardize my immigration. So if it's within the EU, I haven't yet because right now I'm just I even though Portugal can have some challenges, I kind of know what the challenges are right now a little bit. And I don't feel like learning that in another country right now. Now, I don't know what the future will hold, but right now things are good. They're changing. The pricing is starting to not make as much sense anymore. So I got to figure that out. But right now I haven't quite figured. It's not on my radar right now. I didn't hear the news about the NHR. Yeah. I didn't even know. Okay, I live here. I didn't know. I found out because my accountant sent me an email and he was like, I know people are stressing. And I was like, wait a minute, what? So now I have to spend some time Yeah, I saw that too. I can't say anything about it really because I'm not educated on it clearly, but I'm also not in the NHR because the way anyway. But for those who are, yeah, double taxation is definitely a possibility. I'm hearing it will end. That is accurate. Yep, P, you're right. I heard that it ends the end of 2024. That is correct. So after this year, it will not exist. So yeah, when is digital nomads will be double taxed too. It's hard to say. I think even the accountants, the prime minister just announced it, right? So I'm not sure even if the accountants here know. I know for those who are already in it, you will be grandfathered in. Yeah, but that's what we got. Let me see. So kind of. So there is a treaty between the U.S. and Portugal that eliminates the double taxation. That's not necessarily the whole case. A lot of that was. It depends on how you're being taxed in general. And there's and you guys know the income has characters, right? So there's earned income, there's investment income, there's different types of income. So the different types of income are taxed or not taxed based on what it is. This is why I'm encouraging you that based on your personal situation, please talk to the CPA so they can look at how you bring in money, whether you're earned income, whether you're retired and you're talking about the taxation on your pension, because that was a huge deal of how Portugal encouraged a lot of people from France to come to Portugal because there wasn't a huge taxation on their pension. So now the question is that going to change? And if that is going to change, what does that look like? And I don't know yet, right? So if you are retired, this is something you really want to know. And if you are retired and you have U.S. income, you're already going to probably lose anywhere from 5 to 10% just off a GP because you're converting USD to euros. Now, you might be taxed. So when you have to go through your various immigration process, you have to show your tax returns and things like that. Not on all of your renewals, but you have to show your income. And so the tax returns may be important at some point, depending on where you are in the immigration process. And, yeah. So, yeah. I think there may be partial double taxation relief. We don't know yet. We just don't know. So that's the, it says have to read the small print all the time. Yeah, I mean, granted, you can read the small print and then some things just don't translate. You got to remember a lot of your contracts, your banking contracts are in Portuguese. So some things translate well and some things don't. When you sign a lot of your contracts here, your lease, your everything, of course, you can run those two translations apps, of course. But when I set up my bank account, I feel like they gave me like over 30, 35, 40 pages of just papers to sign my bank account, which of course in the US, is nothing like that at all. Okay, Euro, that's good. Okay, you're supposed to learn the language. Yes. Okay, so I'm so glad you mentioned that about greeting. Yes, Natasha, I'm so glad you mentioned that about greeting before leading with a question. Yes, that's super important. Please, whenever you're talking to people, just go ahead and greet them. How are the winters in Lisbon specifically? In Lisbon, they're pretty mild. Depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from California, you're going to be cold. December is the rainy month. It is the cold month. 2 years ago, we had a ridiculously cold winter, so that wasn't fun. Last winter, I would say the months of it being cold was more than I was used to. I think it started in October and it didn't seem to get warmer until like January. But that's not typical. So have you observed a lot of interracial? I haven't counted that. Okay. Winters and Olympus are quite mild, milder than, say, Porto. Yeah, definitely. Lisbon is definitely warmer than Porto. What is the political climate? Any issues or concerns? Honestly, I don't know. And that's really ignorant of me. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I don't pay attention to I don't really pay attention to politics in the U.S. either. So I can't answer that question. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I really don't know. Are pensioners taxed heavy? Venus, I'm not sure. I am not retired. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time, I'm not retired. I work, so I'm not sure. We're also all the way not sure how the NHR is going to affect pensions and that type of thing. We don't really know yet. I definitely don't know. My CPA or my accountant, I got the email this morning. I'm probably going to try and schedule an appointment with him sometime within the next couple weeks. So I'm not sure, but it could very well be an option. And so I hope it doesn't feel like I have no answers for you. I'm sorry. I don't, but hopefully what you get from this is that things are changing. Things are changing in the US, things are changing all over the world. And so if moving out the country, particularly to Europe, is something that you want to do, you just want to do it cautiously, okay? So you want to look at particularly paying attention to the financial aspects of your life in Europe, particularly when your retirement is USD and when your income is USD, okay? So I hope that helps. I'm sorry I didn't have a lot of answers. But yeah, if you guys don't have any more questions, then we can end it here. So we good? Going once? Going twice. Okay, so quick reminder for those of you who are interested in creating online income for wherever you move or travel, we're still doing the business trainings every Tuesday. So if you joined me yesterday, I noticed that there was probably some issues with the ideal client. So I'm going to spend the next couple weeks making sure that we'll spend a good amount of time of people ironing out who their ideal client is, because you can't really go any further if you don't do that part well. So we're going to spend some time the whole time, and I'm going to pull that out of you. It's a live workshop. You can ask me questions. You can give me what you have. I'll give you some feedback. Please don't come if you are sensitive, because it's about business. And if you're sensitive and you doing business, then that's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, wait, we got 2 minutes. Okay, great. All right. Hey, Sheila. All right, that's it. COVID. I went back to April, the first time in COVID. McLean, wow. What was that? Even the restaurants, COVID shocked in the amount of, it's getting real. Like, I noticed a lot of the restaurants that I really, really like, some have closed down, and things are so small here that when you go to a restaurant or whatever, you go there often, you probably know the person who owns it, about their kids, about everything. So to see people lose their business it hurts. And yeah. All right, guys. So I hope that was helpful. And so I'll see you guys next week for those on the business stuff. And then I think next week we're doing my trip to Italy. I'm going to show you how I did that for 700 euros. And I think we will be live on that. If you're on my list, I'll send you an email, because I'm completely disorganized. All right, folks, it's been real. Thank you so much. Till next time.